control in the military coup as well. So with 7 years long, he is still in power. Imagining that you are 23 years old minus 7, you are in your high school, right? Your high school life supposed to be something that's fun. You'll be able to explore possibility, to see what opportunity for you to grow in many different ways, just for now and for the futures. But it's not like that in Thailand, where a lot of young people only grow up knowing that there's even wider gap of inequality in the world. The rich become richer, the poor become more, a lot more poorer, and a lot more people become poor. And we not talking about only the human rights violation that has been occurred, because there is a very high impunity and there's no check and balances in the society as well. So for young people, I think that's one thing. When you've been suppressed so long, you started asking those questions, that why is it like this? Why is this not like that? And once they only know the disparities and injustice, you tend to seek information and ask, like, why does it have to be this way? Why people have to be poor? And why is someone being jailed or imprisoned out of no justifications? So those questions and anger started to come from a very 7 years long of non-improvement. So I guess going back a little bit more, Thailand has been evolving a lot with young people's movement. Young people has always been a key drive to and the spark of the social change in Thailand. There are numbers of student movement that change the course of the political histories in Thailand. If you see, there is a lot of university movement in Thailand to ask for a better society, to ask the reform of the government, and that has been it changed the discourse of the country. Though with the 7 years long, with the long suppressions, I guess it has exploded of people being angry and no longer wanted to be a part of this regimes. So the government has used, what has 7 years been? The government has used many various laws, such as those who are descendants to the government, those who think differently, activists, human rights defenders. Either they've been accused, harassed, jails, or many in exiles. And there are unthinkable consequences, as someone being in forced disappearance and severe harms of torture. So those questions that I guess it had led a lot of young people say, like, well, we no longer take that. And I think Rung and her friends get together, and Rung become more interested at the same time as a lot of younger people to say, like, this is no longer it. But I think what has different Rung from other people is the question to ask. She always said, like, oh yeah, why is this color is like this? Why is it that it's like this? So I think for her, being curious is a part of who she is. So that's what happening from last year. So Rung start to come on the streets asking question of the society, and then Rung and her friend has formed this. It's similar to student unions, but they have political party, student union group. So they would go and vote which party wins, and she belongs to one of the university political party, and for her, it's not just this university that is important, but it's larger than that. It's a society as well. So she said, like, she wanted to be there to represent the voice, to be the voice of the young people, not just in university, but in forward. So the group start to involve with not just a school or university policy, but the larger governmental policy. They start issuing statements on certain laws that's happening and have the voice in society as well. And Rung became a prominent activist out of one incident because her friend couldn't speak, and they have drafted 10 manifesto of how they want to see change in the world. She wants to see economic and social change. She wants to see a reform, political reform, constitutional reform, and royal family reform, and monarch reform. So with that, for her, for people, speaking of how bad the society is fine, but when you want a reform, when you want something that it's institutions, when you want something that is big and has belonged of the Thai people's trust, you become the dangers of the society. the 10 manifesto has sparked a lot of people who think the same as her. In the same time, it has sparked and it has made people in authority scared of her as well. So compared to a lot of other people, I think she has been facing a lot of harassment. The government start following her home, following her friends. There are people who also in a very conservative side who feel that what's her requests and her demands on the reform is beyond thinkable. And there are also people on the opposite side who think differently and using hate speech towards her. There's also the government who's like in power that trying to take her down. The government used various ways, as I said before. She is now facing life sentences just to speaking out. And imagining in Thailand to speak out and to talk about monarch, you could get 15 years in jail out of one cause. And if you multiply how many cases do you have, I think that's a lot. So why is her? Why do we have to help her? For me at least, her activism is it's beyond my, how should I say, admirations towards her. She's a very shy person. She doesn't speak a lot when she just with like 2 or 3 people, but she's very observant. And I think that's in a way that as she said, like she struggles every time that she has to speak in the public. But because she knows what are the consequences, and she knows that to be the voice of other peoples and to take a stand of what is wrong is important. So she always deliver very powerful, a very powerful speech. Other her friends said that she is a very hard outside. She looked tough and she willing to do everything, but she's also soft inside as well. She has a great connection with people. She liked to listen to people, especially with people in an older generations, and I think that's what her is a great connection to people in different generations in the world. So either older, younger, or the same level. And another thing is, I think she is also a strong believer of people powers and the movement. A lot of time when you want to grow up a movement, right, there's going to be just only one leader who moves everything, but she knows and she feels that to change the society, you need everyone to be a leader. You need everyone to have a voice. And of course, the topics of conversation just can't be one topic. I think that's what's a very great tactic of the movement is. It's a very flat movement. Maybe I've talked in a very general term, but instead of having a very hierarchical of the leaders and people following her, she said like there's no way that we can talk about democracies if we're not talking about women's rights and LGBT rights or labor rights or economic and social rights. Therefore, last year, with having people connecting to each other and be able to raise those conversations, not just in the urban area but in the suburb area as well, we have created more than 1,000 protests last year. So with 1,000 protests, the number has been the topic. It had raised a lot of issues that was undercover. We now talking about the economic and social rights, land rights in Bangkok, which never been connected before. The situations about the conversation between freedom of expressions and economic and social rights usually is quite different, separated, but now it's merging together because they see both important. I think it's similar to what we talk for in human rights. So I think that's something that her approach has been in a way that we have to connect to each other, we have to talk to each other, and we have to believe that everyone could be leaders, and we have to support everyone's movement together. So therefore, I think you get a lot of people in the larger scope than just one thing or just one demand of thing. And I think if there is a protest when it comes to marriage equality bill, then she would go support her. She would go support the group as well, and the group would go back to support what she's doing. So I think that's a very great tactic that she's been using. And she also very good on using her speech, her voice, not just in Thailand but throughout outside. She of course came up to me one day and asked like, May, has anyone knows what's happening in Thailand? And I think that's a task for me to make sure that people knows what the movement is about. And I think the movement of young people does not just stay in Thailand, but it's in the very big and larger group. Okay, so I think what's her condition right now? Like I said, she wanted to be here because she was not in the prison before. Before that she was in the prison twice. The second time she contracted COVID in the prison because the conditions of the prisons and the amount of people who are pre-detained or detained or the sentence is severe, have to be in jail, which means the numbers of the prisoners or detainees are very high in that, which you can contract COVID quite easily. In the same times, the second time she was in the prison because her bail was revoked, she has gone through 60 days hunger strike. She said a lot of people feel like it might danger her health, but she said like no matter where she is, she will continue fighting. If people outside the prison does not stop doing the fight, then she will continue the fight as well. And I think that pressure kind of gives them the pressure from inside kind of give a lot of people outside the prison an encouragement to do something more. And this time, the day that her bail got revoked, it was unexpected. That day, it was the charges against her wearing a crop top. A crop top is when you're wearing like a crop top and that. And she said that she only has one dad. Where that's what is written there, and what the government see or what the court see is that she is stirring up people to hate institutions just as monarchs, or trying to get people to rise up against the government. And having that actions mean that she is a danger to society, and she's dangerous for she is breaching national security. And that having wear crop top put her in jails and her bail's been revoked. And for her, it has been really hard. As many times as I talk and meet with her, she always scared of being imprisoned. Because who's not scared of being in prison? I think everyone's scared of being in prison. But she said if it means that standing for what is right, and if it means that standing for and be the voice of other people, if we're not giving up today, we hasn't lost yet. So I think that's the message that she wants to give to other people. And now she wants other people around the world to support what her movement and people's movement is. And right now, Amnesty Thailand and People's in Thailand are asking for her, demanding the government to get her bail, and demanding the government to make sure that freedom of expression, assembly, and association is being respected. People should speak freely without being judged, without being judged by a court, or without having criminal charges against them. And I think what she wants is not just the improvement of the society, because as she's a young person, but I think she wants to see people living in inequality, not in the future, that's now. So what Amnesty Thailand have done is we create a lot of solidarity for her. We started to send her messages, letters to the prison that she's at, and we're trying to observe what's happening and pressuring people to make sure that we are not forgetting about her, and pressure and connected to people around the world to help pressuring, because pressuring works. And I could see that the Thai government is very anxious of this global campaign. So what we have to hashtag right now is we have something called Rung is my rainbow. Rung means rainbow. So Rung is my rainbow, or save Rung. And I think that's something you can track on what's going on. So what you can do as students, university students, or teachers and stuff, letters, solidarities, tweeters, anything that create and spreading the word of what's happening. I think sending letter to either your embassies or to Thai government, that's something is we should do. And also send messages, not just to her, but to a larger group of what's happening. So I will quickly leave with that, because I think I spent a little bit too much time on my side.
That was fantastic, May. You didn't spend too much time at all. Thank you so much for speaking so articulately about the situation in Thailand and giving us some insight to the history of the last 7 to 8 years. and what has motivated and spurred Rung and other youth activists to go to the street and to exercise their right to freedom of expression and their right to freedom of association, freedom to protest peacefully, and how they're being punished unfairly for simply acting out these rights. And for also why it's so important to act for Rung now. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about all the different things that everyone here can do and that you can do in your schools and campuses and communities and families. Writing letters to authorities in Thailand and then sending the letters to us, for example, and sending Rung messages of solidarity that we'll hopefully do today together as well at the end of this webinar. There's been no specific questions come through at the moment, May, so thank you so much for that. And if questions maybe come through, please do post them in the chat and perhaps we can answer them there or indeed after the webinar as well. I'm sure that we can get back to any specific questions. But thank you so much, May, for joining. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And now I'd like to ask Imogen Raleigh from Amnesty DCU to speak. Imogen is going to give us a little bit of an insight into how they're organising and mobilising and raising awareness for Right for Rights in DCU this year and in previous years. Thanks, Imogen.
Perfect. Thank you, Deirdre, and hello to everyone who is here today. I myself was in a school university group. So I've been through the process and it's really great to see so many people motivated to help. And I know May has definitely motivated us all. So in terms of what we're doing to organise Right for Rights as like a university group, generally every year we tend to elect a specific Rights for Rights officer, and it's either a member of the committee or just one of our members in general. Within that person specifically organises and facilitates the talks along with the rest of the committee. And they host kind of a presentation of each campaigner or who we're campaigning for that year. And obviously I'm trying to keep it as open as possible so that it's applicable to any year. But that is generally what we do. It has changed a bit this year and last year because obviously last year it was more coming back. We didn't know what was going on and it was entirely online. Whereas I'm sure, as everyone knows now, you know, we do have some opportunities to be in person. So we are organizing some in-person events. However, I think the main thing with our campaigns for Right for Rights, particularly because it's coming up to kind of Christmas and exam season for everyone at university, and I'm sure for those who are in school as well, there are exams, and obviously just the personal aspect of Christmas and it being such an exciting time of the year. So in terms of that, what we try to do with all of our events is make it kind of a mobile learning situation so that whatever happens in the event, we can post to social media, we can post to our platforms, we can email our members and let people who didn't necessarily have the time or just was too emotionally stressed out at that time to kind of pick up the information. Because what we found in our experience is the hardest thing is getting people to participate. But once they do hear of the causes and everything, they become a lot more motivated, but just getting there is the difficult part. Then in terms of activities, what we've done in the past years and what we did last year was we had a kind of Right for Rights 5-day workshop, and each day we had a Zoom event in which the Right for Rights officer, which was me last year, presented, and people came along and just learned about each petition. Then we also host letter writing workshops, which have now become more so email writing workshops because with COVID and everything, sending the letters, which obviously you can still do, there is a facility to do that, is a little bit more complicated. And getting people to send emails is generally a lot easier because you can just send them off on your desktop and it takes 2 minutes to do. So definitely that has become an advantage of COVID in a way. So I would definitely recommend, if you are running any events, make sure that they're mobile and people who can't attend at that period in time can take action subsequently afterwards. So that is pretty much all I have to say. I would just briefly speak on it, and if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, or you're interested in anything else, just please let me know.
Thanks so much, Imogen. Really appreciate that input. It's really good to know kind of what's happening on campus now, where it's possible to organise in person and still virtually. And how we all have to modify our activism and our organising in these times, but that people really do want to take action. Sometimes it's just kind of getting their attention and letting them know about the cases in our own words, and communicating the kind of real life situations people are in and how we can take action. I know that there was a question here. May, if you're still with us, you might have time to answer. So from a student, Joel in Lucan Community College was wondering, have any government officials mentioned anything about Rung's imprisonment status? For example, the sentence, how long she will remain in jail? Have they given any recent updates?
Yes. So right now it's still under the investigation process, or in the hearing process. The court in Thailand takes a very long time, which means that you could be during the pre-trial, you could be pre-detained for either 4 or 5 years, and that is what we call SLAP. It's a strategic litigation work. So basically, what they said, if you're not wrong, then you could prove to the court. Right? And what happening is, after a very long time of trying to prove yourself innocent, that you still have to be detained if you are found that you are breaching national security, if you're a threat to society. So at this moment, if I'm not mistaken, she is now having 18 less majest charges against her. So 18 times 15, that's many years in jail. And during the pre-trial, during this process, it might take, like I said, 4 to 5 years. So this will last very long. Of course, there have been international pressure, and not just activists, but diplomats. We have something called Universal Periodic Review, which is what we have. Each country has to check the human rights situations, like friends and friends human rights situations. And Thailand has been reviewed this year. It's got third cycle. And many countries have speak about the in general on providing spaces and giving spaces for people to exercise their rights, and stop using less majest, or Article 112 that we call it in Thailand, to silencing the people. This in the term, it's quite prominent and it's quite official. But what the Thai government has responded is that this is the matter of Thailand. We know what we're doing. And you know that human rights is not just, oh, this is our law, we will go by our law. What if the law is unjust, right? So this is what we have done so far. When it comes to regional pressure, we have something called ASEAN, it's an Asian collaboration of the government. Is the same as EU and stuff. But what ASEAN have done is nothing, because they have this mutual understanding of not to intervene on other countries' politics, which means if there is a human rights violations in Thailand or in Cambodia, it is very difficult to commenting on the situations. So this is the current situation that she has been in. Right now, what I can see what's happening is they will put her on revoke her bail for either 6 months or 7 months, make sure that the movement is dying down, make sure that people get scared. You might be one of Rung's cases, or you might have to go to jail as well. Until that, then they would release her. And that would be on and off, which means that she might not be able to pursue her education, finish her education, travels, or have a normal life for a very long time. So that's the current situations and legal process right now.
Thanks for answering that, May. And yeah, it's really scary just how the authorities there could use that tactic of, silencing people by, repeatedly insisting they go back to jail, so that they can't continue their protesting and activism, even if it's peaceful protesting, and it'll put a halt to her life, as you say, which is not acceptable. So hopefully now we can all, gather together in action for Rung. I'm going to share my screen now and explain a little bit more about what everyone can do, and we can also act right now. There'll be some links shared in the chat as well, about the links to the petitions on our website and where to download resources, so you can follow those. And I'll talk through a little bit more that we can do. Great. So raising awareness really is key. So talking to your friends and family, especially during during the pandemic, when we haven't been able to have as many social interactions. I know last year a lot of people kind of did Right for Rights actually with their families and in their kind of bubbles in their households. So that's really important. And to your classmates, to other teachers on campus, and on social media. So we're going to share the link now to sign all. So I can see here that Siobhan has shared that, which is fantastic. And on our website, so the first link that was shared in the chat here is the homepage for Right for Rights on our website. And you can go to click on a button there for organising in groups for Right for Rights and download a letter writing pack. And that gives you sample letters of what to write to the authorities in Thailand. And example messages for social media and how to tag the authorities as well. We're also going to share here an example solidarity message to send to Rung, and Rung means rainbow in Thai, I think. May, is that correct? So including that, and to just really send her as much warmth and solidarity as we can at the moment, especially after she has had to return to prison. And if you tag Amnesty Ireland, we'll reshare, so that will reach even more people through all our networks. So please do tag Amnesty Ireland as well. And use the hashtag Rung is my rainbow, which May suggested, and also Right for Rights 21. So these are some ways that you can take action with your groups and by yourself. And this is taken from the letter writing pack, but using the rainbow and the heart, and drawing pictures of rainbows and taking a photo and tagging yourself. So anything personal, I think for Rung hopefully would lift her spirits a little bit. We're going to share now a link to a solidarity card that hopefully we can all see happening together in real time, so we can all start adding messages. So Siobhan has just shared the kudo board there, where you can start adding gifts and messages that we'll then send to Rung. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute and I'll bring up the kudo board so we can all look at that together. I'm going to share again so that we can all see. Hopefully you can follow the link to join the board. And I know that we have a good few people here, teachers, where groups of students are joining together. So they might not have access right now on their own devices to do this, but for whoever is on their own device, if you could start leaving some messages, that would be great. Okay, so you can see here that Rung loves cats, so that's why we have some cats there, and also a heart. Yeah, and we're really I suppose it's great that in schools and on campuses in Ireland that we can still mobilize, and we can still meet together in person. So that's a really unique opportunity for people who are in a school or university environment at the moment, that you are there in person together, that you can talk to people, you can create notice boards and do announcements over the loudspeaker. You can have petition tables and letter writing meetups, and you can use our letter writing pack for sample letters and for example messages, and you can act yourself as well, which is, I think, very powerful through your own networks and on your own social media. Great. And we're going to also share a feedback form just on the webinar. I'll give people a few minutes if they want to add to the Kudo board, or please do add to it afterwards as well. And I'm also going to share a Google feedback form. So please do let us know any thoughts on the webinar as well. And we have another one coming up on the 30th of November. It's a Tuesday and it's at 1 p.m. So an hour later. And it's on Makita Zalarateru in Belarus. He's another young person who's been detained without a fair trial. He's only 17 years old and he's also currently in prison. So to learn more about his case and speak to campaigner Tatiana in Belarus to get more insight. And we hope to have a secondary school activist speak at that webinar also about how they're mobilizing for rights in their school environment. So it'll be great to get that insight as well. Great, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And seeing as we have a few minutes left, May, I just have another question for you myself. So it's great that we have another little bit of time. I'm just wondering, it's really interesting that you said that a really, really good approach that Rung has had was bringing lots of different groups and kind of human rights issues together because they're all actually interconnected and that the struggles are interconnected. And that's a really amazing, really amazing capacity that she has for bringing different groups together because obviously all human rights, they are they're all interlinked, and it's important that we work together to have more power. But I'm just wondering how she managed to get so many different groups on board when maybe challenging the monarchy is quite risky and it's quite controversial. Like, was it difficult to get other groups on board, or did it become very clear to everybody that it was a common cause and that they maybe were silent for too long and that they wanted to act together?
I think it's just a really good point. I think if you analyze the movement in itself, what is happening is we have always been a very strong, youth network, which means youth kind of go to in every single element of the civil society work. There would be youth work when it comes to land rights, when it comes to youth work when it comes to indigenous rights, and these youth kind of connect together. And I think that's one thing that we have obtained really well in Thailand, and trying really hard to obtain that space. And even though that space doesn't blossom in right away, it has led to for a lot of young people having a conversation together. Say, oh, what's happening up north when it comes to indigenous rights? You've been prosecuted for what's called for intruding land, which is their land, stuff. So I think that connections kind of stay, and for her, I think searching and connecting to that connection needs a lot of trust, and I think that's something that she's been working on with her friends, and make sure that every time that she go on a stage, you're always recognizing a lot of different human rights struggles or struggles around. And I think that gives the people the feeling that, okay, this is an open space, this is a safe space, and that your voice would not be disrupted or drained down or devalued, but it will be fruitful and talk about the conversations, what's happening, and help together. I think a very beautiful scene that I saw, that there was a protest when it comes to reforming the constitutions, and also a protest when it comes to healthcare for people with disability, and another protest on the same day with land rights issues. So what happened is either each of the protests is done, they come and merge together. So they're going to support the democratic movement that literally walk to support the different movement and be a part of it. And rather than just taking the spot, they become the audience and listen and learn of what the experience of the adult or young older people have been working to push the law before. So I think that's a very beautiful thing I see. Talk about the very controversial topic that it has always been taboo in Thailand. We always, not always, we has a very strong for Thai people, they have a lot of strong connection between the monarchs and the people, but in the same time, it doesn't leave room for criticism, or it doesn't leave room for those people who ask them the questions. And I think that even though you work in civil society, it's still quite challenging at first. I think last year when she announced this manifesto of reforming of the monarch, or make sure that the monarch is under the constitution by law and by practice, it got everyone stirred up and then asking the question: is it too early? And the question for her is like, when is it not early? We will never be ready, and if we didn't ever start a conversation and it's never got there. And having that momentum, people kind of pull back for the first couple of months to see like, well, should I continue joining this movement? But at the same time, they start to highlight the problems that having the law that's severe, having no check and balances, having people disappears and the land taking away because it's it owns by royal assets, or it's never been yours, and what are the current problems it's facing at the moment. And it turns out, okay, if you start seeing the problems, maybe we looking how can we do better. And I think that's how people start questioning, should he, a person who was 85 years old, been accused of lèse-majesté, of sending a text of defaming the king, and the phone that he has is like a burner phone. He said he doesn't know how to use the phone. And even though the case process is still going on, he has to be pre-detained as well as the same as Rung, and he passed away in the prison. And that, question a lot of what life's supposed to be is, and this is unjust, and people know it's unjust. So these conversations continue and start talking, and people start seeing more that, okay, there's a need to do this, and reforming of the monarch institutions, it's not taking them down or the abolishment. I think that's something that we're trying to be clear and specific about it. This is not the abolishment of the royal family or a monarchy in general. This is to make sure that they are under the law, legally and practically. So that's what I can say at the moment. And now a lot of people know. People who approach the movement or who work on different issues of human rights, they see that there's problems and they're taking part as well. Now there's a movement of reforming the Article 112. There is now an online petition that you can sign. So I think they do it both ways. And like in other countries, you could sign a petition, send it to the parliament, and you can also demand on the street. So I see that they try different ways to make sure the voice being heard. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much for that extra information, May. And I think it just speaks a lot to how you mentioned that Rung and the movement, they believe that everyone can be a leader and that everyone, should have a stage to share their voice and the issues that they're directly experiencing, and how there's much more power in working together, and that's how you build a people-powered movement. And just, yeah, all those extra insights there into, I suppose, Rung's calls for action and the messages from the movement, that it's not about the abolishment, it's about the reform and ensuring that people's human rights, are supported. So thank you so much for that. And I can see that lots more messages have come up on the Kudo board. So I might just share that Kudo board as a final way of saying goodbye to everybody today. And thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to share my screen now. And I really hope that this will a lot more action for Rung and for other people in Right for Rights. And thank you so much to May for speaking, and also to Imogen from DCU as well. And please do follow up with any questions afterwards, and we hope that you'll fill in that really short form with the webinar feedback, just to support us in creating the best possible webinars and events for all of you, to support you in your activism work. And we'll also send out an email afterwards with all of the links and any further information as well, so you'll have that all afterwards as well if you didn't catch some of it today. So thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing now if my mouse will work. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope that you have a lovely afternoon, and May, I hope you have a lovely evening there in Thailand. And great to be here together in a space today to talk about Right for Rights and what we can do. Okay, thank you everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.